All right. Hey, what's up? This is officially the first podcast I've ever done. Well, I've been a guest on other people's podcasts before, but this is the first one. We've decided, I had a meeting earlier with the crew, and we decided that a podcast would be a great idea. New way, sort of new medium to increase value, add value. And so I was like, you know what? Let's just implement this immediately and get it started here. And so what I'm planning for this in the future, I think this first one, I just want to make it kind of short and quick to give you an idea of what I'm thinking here, but really it's going to be the feedback that I get from you, the listener, into the direction of how this will go, what sort of content is added, what sort of guests that I have on. Most likely, pretty much every time we'll have more of a duo scenario here. But speed of implementation, want to get this started right away, often quick, and get it up and running, as well as then learning the processes so we can get this in the future, refine it, make it better. And like anything else I've done, whether that be video blogs or creating a blog, a lot of times it comes down to, as Seth Godin says, just get the damn product out. Quit getting stuck in that paralysis by analysis mode and just get something out there. And so this is the first step of that. So like I said, I'd love feedback at the end of this to let me know what you suggest for the future, what type of guests you'd like me to have. And I've already got a couple guests in line, some of my closest friends, most successful friends, mentors, things like that I think are going to make this a lot of fun in the future. I don't plan to do this every week, by the way. It's probably going to be like once a month, if not every other week or something like that. Keep some consistent schedule. So make sure in the future to subscribe, sign up, however you can, so you get this in your inbox, so you get notified every time. So today, what I thought would be fun for me in this very first one is to talk about some of the best resources that I've had along the way of my last 10 years or so of being a coach, as well as just a self-development junkie myself here, to give you just some great resources. And everyone loves book lists and stuff like that. So I thought I'd get into some of my favorite books, why they're my favorite books, and why you should read them or reread them. So first, I guess even before I dive into this, I'll give you a couple philosophies that I have related to reading. And I get a lot of questions about this, so hopefully I can make this just all like reading intensive sort of podcast to start things off here. The first thing I would say is that I do not agree whatsoever with skimming and going quickly through books for many different reasons. Of course, it comes down to the purpose behind why you're doing it. If it's for enjoyment, then why would you want to push through it so fast that you're just getting quick little FYI facts? That's what Google's for. You can get those FYI facts. You just ask Siri on your damn iPhone or something like that. For me, the first thing is that books are enjoyable to read, especially certain books. So one example of that, which I would say is the book I've read the most time-wise, I guess, for sure, as well as one that I read every year, and that's Atlas Shrugged by Ayn Rand. And so this one, like I said, I read it every year. It's a great way for me to remind myself of the quintessential man, just the perfect man, because she writes about in this book about just amazing characters, the Hank Reardons, the Ronyar Donaldsholds, the Francisco d'Anconias, and of course the John Galts out there, about who these people are, the way they walk, the way they hold themselves, the conversations they have, and the mindsets they have, the way they look at their businesses and the way they execute on their business. It's just unbelievable. I mean, they're cartoonish versions of the ideal man. So it's great to look at that because it's a fiction story here, and I'll explain a little bit more about the book in a second. But because it has that fictionalized way of Ayn Rand, who's a philosopher / writer, and she uses this fictionalized story to basically describe her utopian world of, well, I guess dystopian as well as utopian world of what life should be like if you followed her doctrine through and through, which is what she calls objectivism, which is basically a form of extreme self-esteem, an extreme manifestation and expression of self-esteem. And a lot of me reading the Atlas Shrugged and the Fountainhead books by Ayn Rand is what made me find out about Nathaniel Branden, who I would say is another one of those, if we want to get into another book, the book that I start off a lot of my programs when I used to teach the Lifestyle Academy, the first big book that I say, it's like week 1, start off by reading The 6 Pillars of Self-Esteem by Nathaniel Branden. So that's another fantastic book. And like I said, it's very much a pillar of what I teach, of kind of the 3 tenets of inner game, which would be self-esteem, core confidence, and emotional intelligence. The self-esteem stuff, I get that all directly from Nathaniel Branden, which is kind of like a pragmatic view of the characters in Atlas Shrugged. So if you want to learn how to become the next Hank Reardon, check out the 6 Pillars of Self-Esteem. But I guess back to Atlas Shrugged here first, some of the core things that I took away from it. I love, she has the whole laissez-faire extreme capitalist view where it's almost too extreme where she's going with there. But I like the idea of you have full control of your life. You take full responsibility, getting into the fact that the only thing you can control is your awareness and choosing to think or choosing not to think. You can choose to check in or check out. And that's really the only thing that we have that's under control. And through that conscious awareness and where we put our focus, we can decide to say, okay, now that I've chosen to focus on this, I'm going to take action in this specific way. Or you can say, you know what, that's too scary. Or I don't want to go there. It'll create too much pain. And because of that, I'm just going to check out. And what that does is make you have less control over the world, and it decreases your self-esteem. So some examples would be, let's say your budget. You know your finances, they're just not really that great. You've never really tracked anything like that. And you're afraid to start because you don't even want to go there because you know how bad it is. But because of that, what happens is you're creating less control. You're giving away control because you're too afraid of that little bit of pain. Coming out of it on the back end, you're actually going to raise your self-esteem because you're taking control and taking responsibility. If we go in and apply this here with the 6 pillars of self-esteem, one of the pillars of self-esteem is self-responsibility. So the more responsibility you take in your life, the more control you'll feel, which leads to a concept called self-efficacy. And self-efficacy is how effective you feel in the world, how when you make a decision, it's a decision that leads to something happening that you can predict to be the right sort of thing to happen. So an example would be, let's say you get really good at business and you have some marketing strategy and you're thinking, okay, I'm going to do this, this, and this. And from my past experience, if I change and tweak this headline in this way, it's going to do better. And you do that and it works. Boom, that increases your self-efficacy and you feel more confident, you have higher self-esteem and a higher sense of self-worth and deservedness in that area because you have more experience to prove yourself. And the more you do that in every area of your life, the more overall self-esteem and confidence you're going to have, which is why things like travel are so amazing and just pushing your comfort zone in any way that you can. So Atlas Shrugged, fantastic book. It's kind of long. I like the audiobook format by, can't think of the guy's name. Christopher Hurt is the narrator of Atlas Shrugged, the version that I prefer. So that's a fantastic book. And then again, Nathaniel Brandon's 6 Pillars of Self-Esteem. That one, I would prefer to have you read it, the actual book, because the audio is actually an abridged version. It's only like an hour and a half or 2 hours and a shorter version compared to the actual book itself is just, like I said, go through that book and do the exercises. That's the other thing I'll say. The sentence stem exercises in there. I've had other times where a lot of times when I work with my Chosen 20 private coaching clients, I'll have them go through a period where every day they have to email certain sentence stems. And through that, a lot of them say, they're like, dude, this was the best part of the whole coaching program. And I guess for those that haven't read the 6 pillars yet, let me explain a little bit what the sentence stems are. Basically what it is, it's a way of creating open-ended sentence fragments that allow you kind of your unconscious or other than conscious brain to pop up and answer the questions or answer these little sentence stems. And what happens is all this stuff starts bubbling to the surface of things that were a little bit outside of your awareness that are great aha realizations to really give you a roadmap to take your life to the next level. So some examples of sentence stems would be things like, if I had 5% more self-responsibility today, I would ... And then you just answer that as fast as you can. Don't think too hard and just flow on it. And some of the other pillars, if I had 5% more integrity today, I would ... What would that mean? Oh, I would have spoken up at work when somebody said a racist joke that I didn't agree with instead of just biting my tongue. If I had 5% more integrity, I would have told my girlfriend that this girl texted me and I should have just deleted her number, but I texted her back. Oh my God. If I had 5% more, personal presence and being more present to the moment, I would ... And maybe be like, I'd pay more attention to my niece when I'm hanging out with her and babysitting instead of thinking about what else I could be doing during this time. If I was 5% more present today, I would, when I'm listening to my boss, I'd actually pay attention to him and make better eye contact. I don't know. It's the things for you. And those sentence stems, like I said, by cutting off those fragments, it makes you think of all these new cool things pop up that all of a sudden were completely outside of your awareness. And you're like, oh my God, I didn't even think about this stuff. So that's a great thing. If you want more of those, again, definitely check out that book. That would be the second one that I'm going to go with here. The third one, this is a little curveball, is Psycho-Cybernetics by Maxwell Maltz. And if you're going to get it, get the version that has been revised by Dan Kennedy who is one of my favorite marketers. He's awesome. He loved the books so much that he bought the rights to these books. And so he updated them. It's not about marketing at all. It's about what I call your other than conscious mind, a concept that I got from Dave Dobson. What they call there, probably unconscious or your subconscious mind would be the Freudian term. And what they're talking about in this is using a big part of your brain that most people never use. It's kind of like a scientific way of looking at the law of attraction, in that it's not about, these little energy balls are giving you manifestations of your deepest beliefs. What it is that you can train your other than conscious mind, your subconscious mind, to be working when you're sleeping, to be working while you're doing other things. And in today's society, we get so stuck in the conscious thoughts that we have. The thoughts of, you have to think everything has to be on the conscious level where you're deciding, and that's on the level of the words. Conscious mind is on the level of the words. Everything else, like your habits, which you're living your life way more in habit-based format than anything else. If you think about everything, you're breathing, you're not paying attention to your breathing. You're not paying attention to the blood flowing through your body. You're not paying attention to when you go drive your car, when you put in the clutch or when you're shifting gears or when you turn the blinker on, when to switch the radio station, or when you're talking to someone, you're not thinking what tone of voice you're using, or when you use eye contact, unless you're consciously paying attention to some of these things, or your body language. These are all happening. They're actually being thought out by your mind, but it's on an other than conscious level. And you can use a book like Psycho-Cybernetics to control, tweak, and change to make that work way more beneficially than you ever thought possible. And so one little example that I thought was pretty cool that I thought of today, I was listening to one of my videos or watching one of my videos that I was editing, was that it was about people that are golfers. So he gives a lot of examples of golfers, and it's kind of like the inner game of tennis, inner game of golf. And they talk about how golfers, if they watch a pro, even on TV, or if they go, even better if you see them in person, but you're just watching them, you're not getting any sort of coaching, but you just see their swing, the next time they go to a golf course, their swing is actually smoother. So it talks about how the same way that people that pretend to shoot free throws in their mind are sometimes just as accurate as people that practice that compared to the control of people that didn't practice at all. So a lot of it is, as long as you just start mentally rehearsing these things in your mind, you can have, it's a big way to increase your success overall. And the way that I apply this a lot in my coaching is through the visualization process. And so people think, okay, positive affirmations, think deep thoughts, and visualize the goals that you set for yourself. But there is so many higher levels to take with this of how extreme you can get with your concreteness and the clarity that you have with these visualization exercises. So I guess let's do this a little bit right now. This will be fun. I wasn't thinking I was going to do this. I was just going to get into the books here. But what I'd like you to do, if you listen to this, as long as you're not driving, is actually just close your eyes for a moment and picture where you see yourself in 5 years. 5 years from now, put yourself into that world. In your mind's eye, where do you see yourself? Make sure you're looking through your own eyes when you do this. Don't be up above looking down at yourself. Look through your own eyes and picture out, what do you see? Let's say if we're going for your lifestyle, what sort of lifestyle do you want to have? If I think for myself, I'm sitting in this leather chair. It's a brown leather chair. I'm picturing the clothes that I'm wearing, what shirt I have, this button-down checkered shirt on. I can see even a little, like some gray hairs in my hair there as I've aged a little bit, and I can see my cute little French bulldog coming in. I can look out at the view and I see the floor-to-ceiling windows and just beautiful view out in Chicago. And I can hear the sounds around me. I can hear the street down below and the people in the room with me and everything there. I have just this concrete idea of exactly what I want. And if you'd like to keep going, feel free to pause this audio here and keep on going with that visualization process. For me, I do this every single day, every single morning as part of my morning ritual. And what it does, it gives you this clear idea of every day. I have such a strong motivation, and it's so much easier to make clear-cut decisions, asking myself, is this going to move me towards that visualization that I have going on there? Is this going to move me towards that ideal future that I want to create for myself, or is it not? And so I would say, like, if I look at myself years ago, before I really started implementing some of these techniques, and again, if you want more details, Psycho-Cybernetics is a great place. I have a bunch of stuff inside the syndicate talking about a bunch of different ways to have these visualizations be more strong. It's a huge aspect of the MAN operating system. But what it does is it trains in you, it rehearses that process of you already having the success, And the thing that's cool is your mind, it doesn't know if it's actually happened or if it hasn't. It just feels that, but it depends on how clear you make it for yourself. And so if I look back at myself years ago, like I said, I had goals, but they weren't specific. And I was working with a guy today and he was like, okay, I want to have financial freedom and I want to feel really comfortable to be able to do the things that I want and not have to stress out about money and just have, that financial freedom. And I'm like, one, there's no passion behind that whatsoever. That's not crystal clear at all. It's super vague and you're using words that don't mean anything to anyone. So get clear. What street would you be living on? What car would you drive? Would you have a car? I probably don't have a car because I'm in the city here. What sort of place would you be in? Who would you be surrounding yourself with? And what else cool shit do you got going on in your life? What lifestyle would you be living? What do you do on the weekends? How much do you travel? What experiences would you have? And picture those things. I said maybe one example. Picture you every month, you don't even look at your bank account. But at the end of each month, you go in there and you had whatever fun you wanted, but there's still more money in your bank account than last month. That's a specific, clear goal to achieve. And every time you visualize that and experience that, you getting on that laptop, opening up your bank account, and there's an extra zero in your bank account there. That feels good. A zero, like moving it in the positive way, not zero balance. That's a little different thing. So that's kind of tying into some of the psycho-cybernetics, a little more detail than I expected to go there. But that's a fantastic book. Some other ones that I really liked, Awaken the Giant Within, classic Tony Robbins book. Driven from Within by Michael Jordan. We'll just go with all the withins. Another one, if you haven't read it yet, another classic is The Way of the Superior Man by David Deida. Super classic way of understanding male-female dynamics, understanding that masculine energy. So I guess since I'm giving a little bit of a breakdown on each of these, the reason I love this one is the masculine polarity and the feminine polarity. It's such an unbelievably great way of understanding every relationship you have with kind of almost anyone, but especially, with your significant other. And how most guys, because of things like the feminist movement that happened early on and, in the 70s and 80s and like 60s, 70s, 80s, which of course had to happen, but it's increased the level of confusion for most men today because they don't know the gender roles. And now when we have like the whole asexual gender fluidity movement coming into play, that still doesn't mean when you're interacting people, there's more of a masculine energy and there's more of a feminine energy. And most men have completely cut themselves off from the masculine side of things. And that's that driven leader. You're a man. You're taking action on your path. And another big part of that is that most people don't know what their path is. So part of that, and what is your path? What does it mean to be living in alignment with that? It's living in alignment with your values. That's the way that I deal with this. So the more you can dive into your values and know that, the stronger you can have that direction and be on your purpose. So using big, cool, fun words there. Check out that book if you haven't yet. It is definitely obligatory for every man that's listening to this podcast. So, I could go a million different directions here with other books. I think, I got to give throw out some business books out there because I know a lot of guys, every entrepreneur out there is looking for more business books. My favorite one that I always kind of start people off with is The E-Myth Revisited by Michael Gerber. It's funny, I was talking to my friend Andre, who's definitely going to be on here at some point, and he was saying the E-Myth is basically like the Rich Dad Poor Dad for the business side of things, where Rich Dad Poor Dad's kind of for the financial side of things. And I would agree with that, but I also think that it's just like such a eye-opening book for a lot of people because they're so stuck in what they call the technician. That's what Michael Gerber would call it, where you're so focused on your technical skill and your craft and the service and the product that you create that you forget about everything else, like the marketing and the processes and the business and the management and the innovation and the entrepreneurial side of things. So it's a great one of saying, hey, like shines the light on becoming a business person and running a business instead of letting your business run you. So the E-Myth Revisited is fantastic. Everyone nowadays, it seems with the internet age, another fantastic book is The Lean Startup, to where you got to be on top of your shit super fast, especially the earlier you are in your entrepreneurial ventures. It's all about increasing revenue, increasing profits. And so you got to have that minimum viable product, lean startup approach, because you only have so much of that runway, as they call it in the startup world, only so much cash flow before things are going to run out. And too often, the biggest mistake I see with starting off entrepreneurs is they're thinking too far ahead. They're thinking 5 rungs on the ladder of success ahead, thinking way up there instead of saying, hey, what's the next thing I need to be focused on? They're thinking about what tax code they want to do their things in and trademarking their copyrighted little patents and stuff like that. And then they run out of money after 2 months because they spent their money on a lawyer and things that they shouldn't have, instead of saying, we need to figure out how to sell this damn thing and find more customers. So I think the Lean Startup is great for really pushing that, as well as it's very inspiring from the standpoint of that. A big takeaway that I took from this that I think most people don't realize is that you can never fail. You can never fail in business unless you give up. And so what happens is you don't fail, you pivot. And so you have a very strategic approach at how you take risks, which every entrepreneur, you're taking risks, and the more success you have, the bigger risks you're going to need to take. But you do it in a strategic way so that you learn from everything, so that if something fails or that you get feedback from it, you can pivot in a new direction that ultimately leads towards the success that you want. And so that for me was very refreshing, of saying, hey, you know what? It doesn't matter what happens. If all of a sudden things fall apart, I can go get investors and go that route, or turn it into an app or something like that, or software. There's always a new way to take this, as long as you just don't give up. And there is a time and place where, hey, this was just completely the wrong move. Let's give up on this whole venture. But still, what learnings can I take away from this? And so it's really important to go in it knowing what you want to learn out of it, instead of just throwing shit up against the wall. So that's the whole Lean Startup methodology. So definitely check that one out if you haven't. And then just a runoff of some of my favorite marketing books. Anything by Claude Hawkins, My Life in Advertising, fantastic, cool story of his whole life. Victor Schwab, Eugene Schwartz, the I Love Marketing podcast, probably one of the only podcasts that I listen to. Love that. It's fucking awesome. All the Dan Kennedy BS products. And I guess finishing it up, we'll just say Digital Marketer. I love everything by Ryan Deiss, Perry Belcher. Those guys are awesome, and they're just doing it right for sure. So to kind of finish things off, I just want to say a couple more things about reading in general. And the first thing I'll say is that if you're not rereading books, you're really doing yourself a disservice. One of the most rewarding things that I did was about 4 years after I got into self-development, I went back and chose those top 5 books, pretty much all the ones I told you about earlier on here, and I read them again 4 or 5 years later. And what happens is it's like paradigm on top of self-development paradigm on top of self-development paradigm. The more books you read, the more everything shifts, because you're coming from a completely different level of consciousness, and those books have a completely different meaning to you. So I would highly, highly, highly recommend, if there's some books that really, really change your life early on, to go back and read them again. It's more valuable than reading the new books, because let me tell you, I get it. I have 300 books on my book list, categorized in different categories, and saying, okay, this is the business section, this is my coaching section, which ones do I need to read next? But I still make sure to go back and get that Atlas Shrugged in every year, to reread. For me, it's some of the NLP books and some of the Richard Bandler books, to really get more juice out of those. The Eckhart Tolle, all that sort of stuff. Go back and check those out. It'll be very, very valuable if you haven't done it yet. Other questions that I get: audiobooks versus the real book. I prefer audiobooks lately, more just because that's just what it feels good right now. I actually think you definitely do get more retention when you read the book, but for whatever reason, my willpower is being used writing, creating content, and doing other things like that. So save that willpower for that. And then when I read, I do audiobooks. And for me, I actually play solitaire on my phone as I'm doing the audiobook, because I don't drive. I live in the city. I don't drive anywhere. And I feel like when you're doing an audiobook, you need something to take the visual stimulus away. So by me playing solitaire, it takes no mental ability really there. And that actually really hones me in more to listen to the book by doing that. So I would suggest, if you have issues where you feel like, oh, I've tried audiobook before, but it didn't work for me, try doing something like that, or do it as you're driving. That, of course, is another great time, to where it kind of hones you in just on the audio format. But like I said, you do definitely get more retention out of an actual book. But I feel like too many times people just don't get started then, because they're too idealistic. They're too much of a perfectionist, and they're saying, well, if I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it the right way, but I don't have time, or I don't really feel like doing that right now. Just start off with an audiobook. Crank it on in your morning. Get a morning ritual. Have it be part of it. For me, I'm making my scrambled eggs. I'm making my morning smoothie. And during that time, I'm just listening to my book. And I get that 30 minutes in normally when I wouldn't be. It's great. It's like multitasking, doing awesome shit here. So I would say do that, do both, reread, check out some of these books. And that's pretty much all we're going to rock here for the first ever 3i podcast. Need to create a name for this thing. If there's a comment section, I don't even know how these things go up. Like I said, this is the first one. Put a comment in, like this thing, subscribe to this thing. If you get this via email, send me, comment on the blog, send me an email and give me some feedback because like I said, this is the first one I've ever done here. If you have any people that you'd like me to interview and recommend, or if you have topics for future podcasts, let me know. And as always, enjoy.